Thanks for joining us on a special short series of Through the Leadership Lens brought to you by the Women in Propane Council. This series is proudly sponsored by Propane Gas Association of New England, or PGANE, and this will run throughout 2026, wrapping up with a live podcast at the Northeast Show in August. We can't wait to see you there. I am Freddie Ridler, and joining me now in the studio is my incredible host, the one and only Jessica Balderston.
Thanks, Freddie. Today's special episode is all about the next generation of leadership in the propane industry, and we've got an incredible group joining us. We're here with Emma Johnson from Lynn's Propane Trucks, Alissa Curtis from PGANE, and Charlie Ermer from Palmer Gas and Oil. Three leaders who are each shaping the future in the industry in their own way. From innovation and advocacy to evolving legacy businesses, they're bringing fresh perspectives to what leadership looks like today and where it's headed next. Okay, team, we're going to kick it off with one question. What does leadership look like to you, and how has it changed over the years? And Alissa, we're going to start with you, and then we'll move on.
I think that starting with what leadership means to me, I think that it's really about leading by example. I think setting the tone and staying calm and being able to connect, moving pieces of whether it's different projects or different teams or whatever that may include. I think it's being somebody that people can just rely on and trust to answer the questions that they have. And I think that kind of leads into how it's changed for me. I think I used to think it was just knowing all the answers and never having to ask any questions. And I think that now it's being able to ask questions, be adaptive, and I used to also think that it was only about managing team and managing people, but I think now I've realized it's so much more than that. It's managing collaboration, it's relationships, it's projects, it's kind of all of it.
That is such a hard concept, being a young leader, is realizing like how important it is to ask questions and not be afraid to get to that point. So that's amazing example for sure. Emma, how about you? What's leadership mean to you, and how has it changed?
I think it really means, like, today, now what I do, I think it's really meeting people where they're at. So I think, we see this very black and white definition of leadership sometimes. You have to be this big figurehead or all these different things that, that are stereotypical. But I think really to be strong in your leadership and to provide good outcomes is just to meet people where they are. Everyone's going to need different things, so you can't lead everything the same every time. Not every project's going to be the same. Not every day is going to be, the same. I've yet to have 2 days that are the same. So I think meeting people where they're at is really important. And I think, I'm still pretty young, I would say, but I think when I was really much younger, when I was like in high school, I used to go to these like leadership conferences, and they would preach this like very stereotypical model of leadership, which we all think is you just stand up in front of the room, to Alyssa's point, you have to know all the answers and you have to get through all this. But really, that's not what I think that having that differentiated approach for different people really provides a much solider leadership, that people need from you versus just, being that figurehead. That doesn't really get you very far.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. When you mentioned like meeting people where you're at, you're kind of a little bit of a chameleon when you're kind of in that leadership role of like recognizing like everybody has different needs, and you might have to shift and change a little bit in order to meet them where you're at. Charlie, how about you?
For me, leadership means a lot of different things. Leading with honesty, integrity, and accountability. Being present, engaged, and accessible to your teams. To treat everyone fairly, not having favoritism. Mentoring and developing others for long-term success. Fostering a positive, enjoyable work environment. We go by the fish program here. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's the Seattle Fish Market. It's like be friendly, make their day, play, have fun. So we do try to do that here. And just staying humble, like ask for advice, get input from others. Like it was mentioned, we don't always have the answers. And then as far as how has it changed, I feel like it used to be more like driven from the top down, right? Meaning direct oversight. Now it's more collaboration, empowering your people and trusting them to make decisions. And just getting people involved and having more of a work-life balance, I think is important to employees. And just that the employee is being treated well, and ever adapting to change, right? We have to adapt to change very quickly in these days. So I would say those are some of the bullet points I would say how leadership has changed.
If I could summarize all that up, it's like staying calm like a cucumber, it's adapting like a chameleon, and watching your own bobber while fishing.
I love that. The analogies. The other thing too, I wonder how many people are now Googling like the fish analogy for the Seattle fish market, because I totally would be doing that right now. That's awesome.
That's fun. That's great. I love it. And it's always fun to hear that question. That's the obviously that's the biggest question we ask during the podcast. So it's always fun to see everyone's perspective on leadership. And it's amazing how many types of leaders there are. Like you said, Emma, you might have learned back in the day this is how leadership is supposed to be. But when Jess and I have the opportunity to talk to so many individuals about leadership, it's never the same answer. And that's what's great about this podcast. So throughout this podcast, Jess and I will kind of go back and forth with a serious question, but then we kind of throw in some type of fun questions, very quick replies. So I'm going to start with my just fun question to kind of wrap up a little bit of that. If you could give your younger self one piece of career advice before stepping into leadership or industry involvement, what would it be? So we'll start with you, Emma. If you could give your younger self one piece of career advice before stepping into leadership or industry involvement, what would it be?
I would say just to go for it. I didn't go right back into the industry. I always worked for my dad, but in family business, but I did other things before coming back. But I've come back and I'm so happy I did. So I would say just go for it. Like it's all going to work out in the end. I think everyone has these things like I want to accomplish all these things by such and such in a year, but just I feel like it all works out in the end. You just got to go for it and not be afraid just to do what you need to do.
Yeah, surge ahead. I love it. Alyssa, same question.
Yeah, I would say to just stay open-minded. I think I've done a lot of things in this industry that I didn't originally think that I would do, and taking on different roles and going on just even as minimal as taking business trips alone. I never ever thought that I would do that, but it's so many amazing experiences that I've had because of it. So I just think stay open-minded and don't put yourself in a box, and just be ready to try new things.
I love it. Yep. And Charlie, same question for you.
Yeah, so very similar. Like keep your ears open, just absorb all the information around you, listen to advice. I think that can go a long way. And just, read up on things going on in whatever industry you're in, and um, just talk to the leaders of the company and other employees of the company because you can learn lots of valuable information.
Yeah, one of the things that a lot of leaders say that we hear quite a bit is listening. And it doesn't just mean like listening to a conversation, but like reading articles, reading magazines, reading newsletters, reading blogs, listening to podcasts. You're right, Charlie. There's a lot of information out there. How far are you willing to go by just listening to what's there? Because a lot of that stuff, it's like hidden mentorship, I like to call it. You don't know if you just listen to your surroundings, there's a lot of mentorship and inspiring conversations that are happening that you can kind of just plug into for a little bit. So I appreciate that comment. So for the big tough question for me, each of you stepped into a leadership or influence at a relatively young stage in your career. What gave you the confidence to speak up, raise your hand, and take that seat at the table before you felt ready? So, what gave you that confidence to speak up, raise your hand, and take that seat at the table before you were ready? And I'll start with you, Charlie.
So I would say for myself, I grew up in the business since 1989. Now I'm dating myself a little bit.
I will write that down.
But it's a family business, and I had the fortunate opportunity to come into the business. My dad said, we could use some help. And I've always started just at the basics, right? I started sweeping floors, filing, And I went through many different positions within our organization. And I felt like each time I did a task, I felt like, okay, I think I'm ready to do something else, try something a little more with more responsibility. So then I ended up installing propane tanks. I became a delivery driver. I did some dispatching, some customer service. So then I worked my way through different positions. I was the delivery supervisor at the time. So I felt like with the confidence on people saying, Charlie, you're doing a great job, keep going at it, encouraged me to continue with that.
And that
I
takes
love it.
time,
Go ahead.
doesn't it, Charlie? It just takes so much time to go through that and like the level of patience that you have to have in order to wear all those hats. But in the long run, you're just so much more well-rounded.
Absolutely.
And I like that people gave you that confidence.
Mm-hmm.
So and I'll just share this real quick story, then Alissa will kick over to you. One of the podcast guests we had about a month ago said that it's really hard to take credit or compliments about yourself, but they said you have to though. Like it's something that when somebody compliments you, take that, enjoy it, suck it in, like breathe it. And when they said that, I was like, that's funny because there's a lot of people I personally work with here at our company that don't take compliments like that. And I'm like, you need to help yourself grow. So I like to hear that it's come up again. So Alissa, same question for you. What gave you that confidence to speak up, raise your hand, or take a seat at the table before you felt ready?
I think it's a couple of things. I mean, I think it goes back to the advice that I'd give my younger self, that to just stay open-minded. I think getting, I was kind of, I'm not going to say thrown into it because that sounds negative, but it wasn't a negative thing. But I think being put in these situations where you kind of have no option but to contribute and to move forward and to do what you're doing. And I think in the same breath, I'm grateful to have a really supportive team behind me at PGANE that I think has helped a lot in building the confidence that I can do the things that I might not always think that I can. And I think just trying it, you're not going to know if you don't try. So I think just the open-mindedness and the support.
Failure doesn't mean that's stop doing it. Failure is just said, let's just move on, but let's just not do that again. Let's just avoid that piece of it.
The other thing too is like I heard like you kind of got thrown into it, but you don't like to say that. But I almost think of it like it's okay to be uncomfortable sometimes. Like in a leadership role, that is totally 100% normal, and something that people should probably embrace is that uncomfortableness because you just don't know where it's going to take you.
And Emma, same question for you. What gave you that confidence to speak up, raise your hand, or take a seat at the table before you felt ready?
I think like it's a mixture of both what Charlie and Alissa already said, but I think I grew up in the business. I think I started working when I was in like middle school for my uncle, just doing like filing, and I would highlight like people's names that had pages, just like super basic things, but these really like little tiny tasks. And as you get older, I started working every other different positions, and I think that gave me really good roundness to have all those different opportunities. And then I went away and I did other things before I came back to the business. But I still always do things here and there, so I never kind of lost touch. But I do think that just doing it really gets you over it. Like you don't have a choice. Like I remember going to my first like industry event and like I didn't know anyone, and you just had to sit at the table and say, so nice to meet you, I'm Emma, I'm from Lids, and just go with it. And you have to do it. It seems hard and not so great at the time, and you're like, oh gosh, I should have said that. But I think over time you get used to it. And now I walk into a room and I know a lot of people, and it's not bad, and it it's fun, and it's a great industry. Like there's really nice people in our industry. I will say that, coming from other industries that are very, very nice and more than generous with introducing you to people. And so you feel comfortable. I will say that is something really special about the propane industry that we have. But I think you just got to go for it. You can't wait and hang up on it and not want to do things because you're like, oh, I don't know. Like you just have to do it, be reserved. You don't want to be like the person that doesn't know what they're saying. I think that's a caveat with all that. But I do think you just got to go and go for it.
That's amazing. You all had kind of a similar vein in all of yours, which is just go for it, start at the bottom, work your way up, keep learning, be open on everything. Freddie actually gave me a piece of advice when I first started in the industry, and that was if you go to an event like in our industry, make it a goal to introduce yourself and talk to 3 people outside of your comfort zone. And that has stuck with me, and I feel like that was a common thread with all of you guys too. So it's kind of fun to hear that. Yes. Okay, we got our fun question, even though all those were fun too, but our really fun question. What is one thing that you're looking forward to this year? Charlie, we'll start with you. What's a thing you're looking forward to?
This year, I plan on hosting an international student, an exchange student. So it's something I've never done before. So it's an exciting opportunity to learn about another culture and to help guide and mentor. It's a high school student, so yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
That is awesome. That's so fun. I can't wait to hear more about that when it does happen. Emma, what's something that you're looking forward to this year?
Moving into a new house I just got, and I'm really excited to like do the moving process and decorate and paint and all that. I think everyone thinks I'm a little crazy, but I think I am really looking forward to that. Everyone's like, moving's such a pain, but I'm excited to get in and do the decorating and all the fun part of moving. I guess probably not moving day, but all that fun stuff I think will be good.
Congratulations. That will be exciting. I personally hate moving, so more power to you if you enjoy that.
That's what a lot of people say. I'm like, I'm not so scared of it.
Yeah. Congrats. Alissa, how about you? What's something you're looking forward to?
I'm actually getting married in September, so I'm excited for that.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh. All the planning on top of everything else going on.
Yes, yep, I know
Good.
that's what I'm very excited to get married. I'm also very excited to be done planning it. So
Yep. I remember
all
that
around.
feeling. Yeah. Well, congrats. I'm sure it'll be spectacular.
Thank you.
Okay, kind of switching gears just a little bit. So, when you hear next generational leadership, what does that actually mean to you, and how is it different from the generation before you? Emma, we're going to turn it over to you.
Well, I would say next generational leadership, what it means to me is being present with what today is. I think things have changed, just in our world from what the last generation was. And so I think you have to be cognizant of that. I think, like here I do all the AI stuff and everyone's like, I'm also like the IT person. I take care of all that. And that's just because of generationally, like my dad was saying, he's like, I struggle so bad, but you have to understand, like, my computer class was to move the cursor in a circle all year. And that was all I, was able to do. And so everything's so different now. So I think incorporating things that we grew up with that the last generation didn't, and how do you bring those? So like tons of AI and all that stuff. I know that's big right now, but just those little things I think kind of help. But also I think sometimes you have different perspective from different generations, and that's kind of interesting. Like my grandfather, my dad, and I, and my brother, and we'll all sit down, we'll all have different perspectives, and I just think taking that all in and coming together as one is interesting sometimes. So I think just working together and seeing what today is and influencing that is interesting.
For sure. We all need that reminder to be present too. So appreciate you saying that. Yeah. Charlie, how about you? So when you hear next generational leadership, what does that actually mean to you, and how is it different from the generation before you?
That's a very good question. I would say that the generational leadership, the next generation, is embracing a lot of the technology that's out there today. Like Emma mentioned, AI is a big thing in today's world. And even at our own company, we are bringing in students like apprentices into our classroom and teaching them the basics, from basics to advanced, right? So we have a training lab. So I think getting out in front of the next generation, helping them learn, and just looking at things in a different perspective than we've always done it. So going back to sort of like how it's been, sometimes I think that we are in a rut and we have our routines, and sometimes it's good to get the fresh perspectives. Otherwise, it can get stale. And I love learning from the learning from the younger generation because they have a lot of great ideas that I think will bring the company, to a better situation.
For sure. So being that open-minded we kind of talked about a little bit earlier and just listening a little bit and seeing what bits and pieces you can take. Awesome. Thanks, Charlie. Alissa, how about you? So what does next generation leadership mean to you and how is it different from the generation before?
I'd like to just say ditto to Charlie and Emma and leave it at that because they made so many great points. But I think that kind of going back to what leadership generally means, the adaptability portion of it, I think is so important, especially in this industry and the way that trends change now. I mean, with the introduction of social media, and I just feel like everything changes so much quicker now with like what Charlie was saying with technology. So I think just being open minded to that and being ready to take on new challenges and adapt new things that you didn't think that you ever would have to begin with. And I think with the social media aspect of it and the technology, it is interesting with my generation because I don't remember not having a cell phone or having a computer or technology. So it is, I feel like, easier as time goes on to adapt to new things than it might be for, I know with my parents, there's a lot of things that they can't adapt to with technology just because they didn't grow up with it. So I think growing up with it, and it's almost like ingrained in you. It's like another limb, like you know exactly how to navigate those things. So I think that is a plus for my generation coming into the industry.
I'd like to say, like, I am part of the older generation, but hearing all this, I'm like, I do remember a time without cell phones and a time without Facebook, but I adapted to new technology. It's always funny hearing young, yeah, and I embraced it. But it's funny, you're right though. Like, it's almost to the point when you're hiring. It used to be, well, do they, we can teach them the propane industry, right? But do they match our culture? That's what we're looking for. Now it's like there's like a third leg to the bar stool. Can they adapt to technology because we have technology? And it's interesting to hear that regardless of the age you're hiring, that you have to kind of pull that in. And that is the next generational leadership is it doesn't necessarily have, it can be most of the time it is that age, right? When you talk about generations, but it also, if you want to be that next gen leader, you can hire somebody that has already adapted the technology piece of it. So it's always fun to hear different perspectives of that. I have a fun question. I'm changing mine up just because of the stories you've shared already. I'm just curious, what do you all keep in the back of your trunk? What do you keep in the trunk of your car? I'm very interested to hear what you all have in the trunk of your car. That's my fun question. So I'm going to start with you, Alissa. What do you keep in the back of the trunk of your car?
I think that right now I have a lot of shoes. I think that traveling for work, I just kind of throw shoes in there that I know that I'm going to need, and then they just end up in my trunk because I don't want them in my back seat. But I think that probably a blanket in case I get stranded somewhere and it's cold.
Shoes to run, a blanket to keep you warm. That's exactly what I'm seeing with that. Emma, what do you keep in the trunk of your vehicle?
My goal is always nothing, and to keep it clean. But right now I have potting soil because I'm starting my seeds for my garden. But so that's what's in there now. But the goal is always nothing and to keep it clean. But that fairly happens. But it's always something I'm trying to get done. Don't leave running around with me.
And Charlie?
Yeah, I would say it depends on the time of year. Right now, I still have a ice scraper and a snow brush, although it's time to probably take that out. And I always have like an umbrella in the back. So, and tissues. You always have to have tissues just in case.
Prepared for anything. I love it. So this is a two-part question. And my first question is for Charlie, and you'll understand why. We're going to get into the propane days. And then I have another question for Alissa and Emma. So I'm going to read both of them, but I'm going to start with you, Charlie.
Okay.
So Charlie, you were the chair of PGANE. And a little birdie, and I didn't know this, so I'm super excited to hear about this. Leslie shared this with me. I guess I really never understood where it came from, but you kind of started the National Propane Day, and that's extremely exciting to take some time to talk about that. So can you walk us through how that idea started and what you did to keep it alive long enough to become reality? And then while
Sure.
you're kind of telling us that story, Alissa and Emma, I want you to listen to that story and kind of what does this story say about the role young leaders can play in shaping the future of an industry, even if it does take time to get it moving along?
Sure, absolutely. So it all started, I always kind of played around with what national day is it today. And one day it was actually National Biodiesel Day. And when I saw that, I said, I wonder what day National Propane Day is. So I just did a Google search and nothing came up. So I was like, I wonder if this is something that I could help get started. Um, so I brought it up at at a PGANE meeting at the marketing committee. And, we floated the idea and everyone seemed to be excited about it. And so Leslie, at PGANE, she, as well as Nate Mashinsky from Eastern, um, and Christina from Perico, they all jumped on this and said, let's try and make this happen. So it took a while. I think the original idea was in 2021 when I first was thinking of this. So it was planned over the course of a year, and with the help and the vision of PGANE and PERC, on October 7th of 2022, we celebrated the first National Propane Day. And believe it or not, we are celebrating our 5th National Propane Day this year. So that's very exciting. So many people have embraced it across the industry by having like cookouts and we've had cookies and balloons and knickknacks, just all things around our office. We celebrated one of our opening of our bulk plants the week of National Propane Day. So it was very exciting.
We celebrate it here as well. We actually make shirts every year. It's awesome. We made tote bags to celebrate National Propane Day. Well done. I got to ask one quick question before we kick it over to Alissa and Emma. What was any, maybe you can't go into detail of this, but I'm just curious, what was the biggest risk you felt like that this wouldn't work? Like, what was the one big risk for you feel like if this doesn't work, why?
Well, I guess that's it right there. So like, some people in the industry were like, not sure if that's going to be a good thing, and I couldn't think of any reason why it wouldn't be. I'm like, to me, this is a great message on behalf of the industry. What would you not like about it? And, to put your name on the national calendar, it does cost money to do that. But I'm thinking with the amount of money that we help contribute into the industry, I feel like it's pennies probably on what the industry spends, and it will give us enormous exposure and have fun with it too. So I guess I would have been highly disappointed if it didn't happen, but I'm very grateful that it did.
Yeah, that's I love that story, and thank you for sharing that. And um, Vivid, when you're watching this, the National Propane Day above all of us with the date, and make balloons and highlights and confetti and do amazing things all over it because it is something to be excited about. It really is, and I really didn't know who kind of were the founders of all of it. So thank you, Charlie, for sharing that story and everyone that was part of it.
Sure. And one other thing that I feel I just would like to mention, because it's very exciting, that in September of 2023, our governor in New Hampshire declared that for October 2025, October to be National Propane Day for the state of New Hampshire. And I
Wow.
actually have the proclamation hanging in my office.
Wow.
He signed it
Yes.
on September 26th of 23.
That is so cool. What just I mean, that's great. I love to hear that. So Emma and Alissa, what does this story say about the role young leaders can play in shaping the future of an industry, even if it takes time?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it feels like kind of what we were talking about before, where it's keeping up with the trends. And Charlie obviously knew that that was a huge thing, national days with social media, with just in general for people to celebrate things. So I think it was such a perfect thing to tap into for the whole industry, because I think that's one thing that, you can never have too much of is propane being highlighted for all of the amazing things that it does. I think that it was essential to this industry. I personally think, and I love it because I just feel like it's so fun to see everybody in the industry come together and do all these amazing things for this amazing industry.
I think after listening to the whole story, the big takeaway there is sometimes you just have to raise your hand. Charlie went out on a limb and said, I have this idea and I kind of thought it through, but he had to raise his hand and have that ability to go for that. So I think that was important.
I will say, what I got out of that whole story is that you don't know when that spark is going to ignite for an idea, and to especially listen to your gut, listen to your intuition, and don't be afraid to just roll with something. So I feel like that's a really huge story and something to take back for everybody listening on, no matter what age, what generation. Listen to those sparks and just kind of just see where they take you. That's awesome. Thanks, you guys, for sharing your story. That's a wrap on today's conversation. A huge thank you to Emma, Alissa, and Charlie for sharing your perspectives, experiences, and passion for the future of leadership in our industry. It's very clear that the next generation is in incredibly capable hands, and we're excited to see the impact of each of you and that you continue to make in our industry. We truly appreciate you guys taking the time to be a part of this conversation.
And that's a wrap on this episode of Through the Leadership Lens, a podcast proudly presented by the Women in Propane Council.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe, download, and share it with a friend or colleague.
And if you want to learn more about Women in Propane, connect with us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram,
or visit us online at www.womeninpropane.org.
I'm Freddie Ridler.
And I'm Jessica Balderston. Thanks for listening.
And keep leading with purpose and vision.